Okay, so thanks for tuning into this video. In this one, we're just going to be discussing a recent issue that I had when I tried to take my drone into Ghana. The drone ended up being confiscated or detained by the customs officers in the Kotoka International Airport. So if you are planning on taking a drone for recreational purposes or just to fly around if you're on holiday, then stay tuned if you are unaware of the new rules. Okay, so we arrived in Ghana in the evening, roughly about 8 p.m, which is quite normal for most of the flights coming in from Europe. And by the time we cleared immigration and picked up our bags, it was probably closer to 9 p.m. If you haven't been to Ghana before, you go through the normal procedures, and then as you're about to leave the airport, you normally are stopped by the clearance officers, the customs clearance officers, which is the last point before you check out of Kotoka Airport. Now, it's quite normal that they will stop you and then try and ask you what's in your bags, what you're bringing into the country, etc. Sometimes it can be a bit annoying, as you know that they are really just after some money, and sometimes they plainly ask you for money. They ask you, oh, what have you brought me this time, or whatever the case may be. So, you know, if you go to Ghana quite regularly, you're probably quite used to this procedure. Anyhow, so in this case, it was no different. We were just about to get out of the airport where we hit that last point. The officers asked us to stop to check and see what was in our bags. They said, what have you got in there? So we just said all the normal regular stuff, clothes, gifts for family, etc. And then the officer asked me what I had or what I was holding in my hand baggage. And in this time, I was holding my drone in a drone case. Now, normally I put this in my main luggage, which I probably should have done had I known what was about to happen next. But I had it in my hand luggage because I felt it was safer to just carry it in the hard shell case. So I opened it up and showed them. And as you can see here, you've got the drone, you've got some batteries, some extra wings, etc. So they asked me to step aside. They pull us to the side for further questioning. The first question they ask is, do you have a permit to fly the drone? Now, the answer to this is no, and that is simply because there isn't really any way that you can actually apply for the permit before you actually get into the country, because the permit is issued by the G.C.A.A, so that's the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, and they physically have to see the drone and take down the serial number, ask you a few other questions before they're able to issue this certificate. So these officers know that there's absolutely no way that you can get this certificate before arriving in the country. If you live in Ghana and you're just going away for holiday and coming back into the country, then obviously that's different, because you would have had the opportunity to get the drone registered and have this certificate before you come back into the country. But for those of us who don't live there, the officers will be well aware of the fact that there's no way you could have this certificate. So my response was no, because as I don't live in Ghana, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to apply for this. But I'm happy to go through whatever the necessary procedures are with the G.C.A.A and put the application in and then get this certificate. So they said, if you don't have the certificate or the permit to fly, then what they're going to do is temporarily detain the drone. And what I'll need to do is basically put in the application, get my permit to fly before I'd be able to take the drone away from the airport. So I asked if they had some way of being able to apply for the certificate at the airport. You know, does the G.C.A.A have some sort of an office there where they could quickly help you register this? They said no, but what I'd have to do is go to the office. They're only open during office hours, which is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We had flown in on a Saturday evening, so as I mentioned earlier, it was just past 9 p.m, so there was absolutely no way that I'd be able to get or apply for this during that time. So as this was the first time it was happening to me, I was a little bit irritated by this point. So, you know, I tried to argue my case and say, well, if you know that the offices aren't open till Monday, why don't you just allow me to take the drone home and then go and register it on Monday? And their response was, nope, there's no guarantee that if they do that I'm not going to fly the drone illegally. So the only way that they can be sure that I don't fly the drone illegally is if I bring back the certificate showing the permit to fly, and then they'll be happy to release the drone. So that was the first annoying thing. The second thing was that he said, well, actually, where you've come from in Europe, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise to you because they have drone laws as well. And I said, well, yeah, they have laws there as well. However, it's much easier in the fact that you can basically just sit a test online for your drone certificate, pass the test within 10 minutes and have your certificate emailed to you. So although you're not allowed to fly a drone, for example, in the UK, without the drone certificates. It is easily accessible. You can just go online, pass your test, get your certificate emailed to you, have a printed confirmation of this on your drone, and then be able to fly in your designated places. But obviously the way in which they've done the system here in Ghana is completely different. It's almost set up for you to have your drone detained. So at this point I didn't really have much of a choice. If that's the way the system is, then there's not really much I could do about it. My thoughts at that time was, as it's Saturday night, Monday's around the corner, I'll go first thing Monday morning to the Civil Aviation Authority and apply for the certificate, and as they say, bring back the certificate and then hopefully pick up my drone. So this is a copy of the receipt that they issued to me at the airport. So you can see here that you've got the receipt number, you've got your name, or in this case the airport where it was detained, the particular of goods, and then interestingly here the reason for detention, which as you can see it says pending production of permits from the G.C.A.A. for further action, and then it's signed by an Eric Norte at the bottom. They did warn me at the time to say, after producing this receipt, they did say make sure you keep this receipt, because if you lose it then potentially you're not going to be able to get your drone back when you're leaving the country. So just to point that out to you in case this happens to you. They did, to be fair, make that very clear to me, so I had to make sure that I kept that receipt very, very safe. So once they issued the receipt, they then sealed up the drone and kept it in their storage. I then proceeded to go to the Civil Aviation Authority on Monday morning, just to obviously show them the receipt as instructed and get the application for the drone in place. So at the G.C.A.A. now on Monday morning, this is the next stage of the process. So I've explained to them what's happened in terms of the detention of the drone, and they've basically asked me a few questions in terms of the drone that I was bringing in, the size, etc. And then they've given me two options. The options are either you can pay a standard fee for the drone and do a test, which is going to cost $20 US, and you can have one which is valid for 3 months but pay double the price of $40. Now, as I was only in town for 3 weeks, I just wanted to get the certificate issued as quickly as possible, so I said yep, the $40 one is fine, let's go for it. And it's almost like an express service if you go for that option. So I opted for that, paid up the $40, and they said okay, what we'll do now is we'll issue you with a letter, and you can take this letter back to the arrivals point, so the customs officers at the arrivals point at the airport, and this letter will basically instruct them to release the drone, and we'll need you to bring back the drone once they've released it to us, and then we'll finalize the certificate for you, because we'll need to check the serial number and check the other questions that you've answered on the form just to make sure everything matches up before issuing the final certificate. So you can see here on the letter, it states here the name, and it states the fact that I've applied to the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority concerning acquiring authorization to use this drone for recreational purposes in Ghana. The process of granting the aforementioned authorization requires a physical inspection and registration of the drone as a result. The G.C.A.A. requests that you allow the above mentioned person with the Ghana Customs and Excise detention receipt number clear his drone under the harmonized commodity codes and tariff schedule from customs to achieve this purpose. Counting on your usual cooperation, yours faithfully. So as you can see, the letter is quite clear in terms of what should happen next. So I took this letter back to the customs officers at the airport, and here's where it gets interesting. I noticed now that there's a new team, because obviously you've got a day shift and not the same team that I met on the Saturday night. So I show them this letter and say, this is what's happened, you've got my drone, and I've got a letter now asking for this to be released so I can finalize the registration process. And the team here have a look at the letter, they go out, they bring the drone, and then they tell me, well, actually, before they can release the drone, am I aware that I need to pay a security clearance fee? And I said, well, no one's mentioned this before. It wasn't mentioned on the Saturday night when I arrived, and it certainly hasn't been mentioned by the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority either. So what is this fee and how much is it? And they said, but the team should have mentioned this before when I arrived on Saturday night, but the fee I would need to pay is 25% of the cost of the drone. So they said, do I have a receipt of the drone? And I said, well, no, it's not actually a brand new drone. It's been over a year now and I don't have the receipt on me. They said, okay, they're going to have to work out what 25% of the cost of the drone would be. After a few minutes, they come back and say the amount that I need to pay to get this cleared is 3,500 Ghana cedis. This amount is equivalent to about $308 or 241 pounds. While we're talking about this, I get a call from the guy at the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority who was helping me register the drone to find out what was happening, as he was expecting me back at that point. So I said, well, it's a good job you called actually, because I'm with the customs officers and they are now introducing a new charge which no one has mentioned. Do you know anything about this clearance charge and what is this all about? The guy says no, he doesn't know anything about this. I wasn't sure whether that was true or not. I said, are you happy to speak to the customs guys because I've got them here? He said yes. So I put him on the phone to them and the customs guys basically explained the same procedure that they've just told me, that the clearance fee is something new that they've now brought in, and you know, that's the way it is now. When they gave the phone back to me, I said, well, look, this is what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna leave the drone with them and then I'll come back and take it when I'm leaving. So in terms of the fee that I had paid to you guys previously, the $40 for the registration of the drone, now that I'm not gonna proceed with the registration, are you happy if I come back and get a refund of the $40? And they said no. Basically, the $40 is basically a tax, and in Ghana, once you pay the tax, unfortunately, that's it. There's nothing we could do about it. So that money is basically lost. So I said, okay, cool. Thanks for your help, and left it as that. So the security team then claimed that if I did go ahead and pay this 3,500 Ghana cedis, if I am leaving the country, I can come back to them and give them the receipt of this 3,500 cedis and they'll be happy to refund that amount. So that could be an option for me. To be honest, after the G.C.A.A. confirmed that the $40 tax was non-refundable, and if you pay tax in Ghana, it's generally non-refundable, I wasn't really prepared to take that chance with these guys and pay this amount, because to me it just seemed too risky, and I was only bringing the drone on recreational purposes anyway, just to shoot obviously some drone footage. So if they're not going to cooperate, I'll just leave things as is, and you can wrap it back up and I'll come and see you when I'm about to leave, and then hopefully pick up my drone and then exit the country as normal. So that's how we kind of left it. So just wanted to bring your attention to this, because obviously, you know, this is quite a big problem if you're not expecting this to happen. The rules aren't very clear. You know, I was more annoyed that a lot of this information isn't provided to you when you arrive, because if it was provided, I wouldn't really have wasted my time and money going to the G.C.A.A. to get this registered. And you know, you do end up spending about half a day going back and forth with these two departments, and if they're not clear on what they're doing themselves in terms of what the procedure should be, and not mentioning this to you as a traveler when you arrive into the country, it's important that obviously I put this information out so that you guys are aware if you are intending on bringing a drone into the country. So you know, let me know your thoughts. What would you want to do? Because for me, the only way this can work now in future is if you either are prepared to pay this fee. Like I say, I'm not sure whether this 3,500 is really refundable or not, because I wasn't prepared to test it. Or the other option, I guess, is you would probably be best to buy a drone in Ghana, which is what I'm considering maybe next time I go. That way I leave the drone there and you'd have to basically just keep registering it each time you're there if the 1 year lapses or your time period lapses for the certificate. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's what happened to me. If you guys have any other experiences, feel free to drop the comments below.